My name is Kathy Manis, and I'm with American Association of Community Colleges. I'm pleased to be the one to welcome you here today. I'm pleased to help facilitate this session, and I'm more pleased because there's a real wealth of expertise in the audience, people who are here who are really at the top of their green game, who will be working with you directly, and I'm very pleased to defer to them for their expertise and guidance, which I'm sure we will all benefit from in the next few hours. My job is to keep you on task and to make sure that we cover as much as possible during this time. So we have a pretty structured workshop for you, but also time for you to have questions. And we also have a lot of people here today who will continue to be here over the next couple of days. So if you don't get them today, you'll be able to see them in other forums and other places and be able to ask them questions. One housekeeping brief announcement: they will be taping this session, and so think of yourself as a model. You've all been asked to sign a form. Hopefully you've gotten a form that says it's okay if you're taped as part of this session. And we would appreciate your turning those in if you haven't. So I ask you to take out your green-colored glasses and put them on and look at the world as green and greener. And hopefully we will get to be very specific in terms of what that means. I'm going to turn this over for an opening, really to set the context from the best person to do that, who is Debra Rowe. I imagine most of you are familiar with her. She's passionately committed to this, to the effort of really understanding sustainability and green jobs and what that means for the nation. And we're very pleased to have her here. So, Deb.
Hi there. So I really planned for 45 minutes, and now I have 8 minutes less, so that means I have to talk faster. So if I start to talk too fast, you know what to do, right? Slow me down. Okay. So I'm going to talk about green jobs. What are they? Where are they? How do you design for them? And how do we educate for a green and sustainable future? I'll tell you about my roles. I've been teaching renewable energy technology and energy management at Oakland Community College. It's just outside of Detroit, where all those auto executives used to live. Some of them still live there. I've been doing that for 30 years. Well, the program's been going for 30 years. And I also teach behavioral sciences. I also teach psychology. And my PhD's in business, so you go figure about that. I'm also president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development and co-coordinate a number of national networks for education for a green and sustainable future. And you'll be hearing more about those today a little bit and tomorrow morning. So let's start with, where are these green jobs and how many are there? So you have these obvious green jobs, right, that people talk about, and then you look for their industry associations to see, and they put out studies that, look at all the jobs, they're going to be here by next year, and the American Wind Energy Association that says, well, if we meet President Obama's goal, then we'll have 185,000 jobs in the next 3 years. And then you graduate students and you go, employers, come, where are you? And in some cases they're there, and in some cases they're not. So how do we address that? And these predictions of jobs, though, are just the tip of the iceberg. So there are the obvious list of green jobs, and it's, as I visit community colleges and other colleges and universities all over the country, and there's a lot of colleges that are popping up with programs for the obvious list, for the wind technicians, for the energy auditors, for the solar electric, the solar thermal. It's the first group that people think of when they think of green jobs. But now let's look at all the others. Well, actually, we don't have enough time today. I'd have to do my whole speech just looking at those others. So let me just suggest that there are a whole bunch of other jobs that need to happen before those technicians will ever get hired. And they are happening. That's why some of these technicians are getting hired, but they aren't often being integrated into our education and training plans. So we could talk about the HVAC contractors who need to understand that every product they sell has green or ungreen impacts, and how can they be better not only at what they already do, but at opening up an energy division of their company, because they're the interface with the homeowners. They're the ones who can make a difference there. The corporate social responsibility officer, who will change what the procurement line will be, so that that way things get ordered, so that way your technician has a job to do. The salespeople, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, came to me and said, Deb, we can teach people how to install these solar electric things in the wind stuff, but we can't teach them how to sell it. And our electricians really don't know how to sell so well, so can you create a course for that? But we tend to think in community colleges more along the lines of technicians, and we let the business department teach the sales course. Well, I think all of us in this room know that the business professors at your community colleges really couldn't teach people how to sell solar and wind. So it's something you have to think about coming out of your courses. Lots and lots of jobs. The jobs that already exist, the jobs that don't exist yet. Let me give you one more, and the jobs that are being created. Energy managers, you see that down near the bottom there? Do you know how the first energy managers started in this country? They walked into corporations, into companies, and said, hire me. I will save you at least my salary on your utility bills, and if I don't, I'll pay you the difference. Gutsy people, entrepreneurial, who now have established a profession that's got great salary, wonderful benefits, but that's how energy managers started, and that's how a lot of these green jobs are going to start. So I don't have time to go through all of these lists, and I don't have all of them up here. But there are a lot of less obvious choices of what are green jobs that you may not have thought about as you created your programs. Wow, look at all of those. How about a sustainable communities planner? Cities all over the country who are doing sustainability designs for their community. And you know it's the plan, it comes out of that planning commission that really dictates where the design constraints are going to be for the community and whether you end up with a sustainable future or not. There's a lot that then feeds down into what your technical programs could be teaching that helps support that. So I don't have time for all of them, and on top of that, then you have to deal with issues like needs assessments and certifications. So we did a national webinar, AACC, ACTE, the Chief State Education Officers, Career and Tech Ed. Anyway, we did this national webinar, and I was supposed to do certifications. So I could give you another 10 slides now on the certifications that are out there. I'm not going to do that. You can go to the link if you want. But how do you pick which ones to design your programs around? And I want to warn you, I mean, here's the short version. Here's a summary all at once. Be very cautious about designing your programs around certain certifications, because it is a messy marketplace out there, and there are not real clear winners at this point. So what you want to look at is what are the common concepts across certifications. Teach those in your programs so that people are then prepared to go on and get the certifications if they want, but you're not tied to a single certification. Now that I've said that, there are, maybe some exceptions to that are emerging that I'll mention. It's great to see this movement. I mean, 30 years, right? And before I went to the college to start a renewable energies program, I owned a company that did energy auditing and solar energy. Before that, I was up on the roof and in the attic and installing these things. I'm so happy to see this happen finally. I'm sure you are too. But it's been like, wait, and now it's all coming at once. It's very messy, and it's difficult to design for. The marketplace is moving very quickly, including new standards. So the American Wind Energy Association is coming out with competencies and skills for big wind. And then they're also talking about maybe approving curricula that comes out. Well, if you've already designed your big wind program, all of a sudden you've got to deal with that, right? Because they are the big elephant in the room about big wind. And then there's new initiatives that create new massive workforce demands. Massive workforce demands. How many of you know about Vice President Biden's announcement about recovery through retrofits? Raise your hand. Okay, I got 3 people. So watch how fast this is moving. So they have just announced this massive program called Recovery Through Retrofits. I have been waiting for over 20 years for this program. We have money through the stimulus money that's going into weatherized low-income homes, which is good because what's happening now is all of us are paying through our tax dollars for the utility bills for people who can't afford their utility bills, and it's like throwing money away to the utility companies. So instead, we're going to weatherize some of those homes about 1 million of those homes. But meanwhile, there's 130 million homes in this country that all need to be weatherized, or at least most. But would you hire somebody to come in and do a home energy audit for you? Who do you know who to hire? How do you know if the work they're going to do is quality work or not? So what they've done, and I give them credit for it because it's been overdue for a long time, is they looked at what are the market barriers to making it a no-brainer for all of us to go weatherize our homes, because we are wasting energy and creating pollution that we don't need to be doing. So what they found is that we need some national standards for the workers. So they have now announced that they're going to be national standards. Those of you who picked BPI, those of you who picked HERS ResNet, you know, the two of them are at the table trying to learn how to play together, and now there's this national standards that's coming out. So you're going to need to remain flexible with all of this, right? Secondly, they're removing the financing bottleneck. A lot of people don't want to pay out of their pocket or can't pay out of their pocket for the energy efficiency in their home. So what they're going to do is attach it by working with the municipalities to do bond financing so that it's on the property tax. So now it's spread out over 20 years and it travels with the owner of the house, not with your personal credit line. Here's the bottom line. You will be able to participate in a program where you know that the workers are trained to a standard, where the savings that you get from your monthly utility bill are greater than the extra property tax that you'll owe. So, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you can either participate in this program and have more money in your pocket from the first month, or you can keep throwing money away to the utility company. Which one works for you? Okay? Now, we're still going to have to sell this. We'll still need salespeople. We'll still need manufacturers and distributors and all those other jobs other than technicians. But this is massive in terms of the workforce implications. It just came out a few days ago. Just one example of how quickly this thing is moving. So still, what is a green job? Well, this is a very limited but still a helpful view. The Department of Labor has recently tagged over 100 occupations in their ONET database. They've got this website. They've identified 12 green economy sectors. Personally, I think it's limited, but it's something that's helpful still. And you can search through there. There's lots of good resources. Secondly, they've identified that the green jobs can be put into 3 different categories. One are green jobs that are going to have increases in demand. So energy auditors, that's a green job, and there's going to be a demand for more of those. Green enhanced skilled occupations, existing jobs, but now they have to have green knowledge in order to meet the norms of the industry. So remember when framers would charge a whole bunch of extra money to do 2x6, 24 inches on center, instead of 2x4, 16 inches on center? So there's a shift now to green building construction practices. And so you need that extra worker requirements for that. And then there's whole new occupations that we hadn't even thought about before that are emerging, and the ones we need that haven't emerged yet. So once again, that's on that website. But know that the SOC listings are incomplete. So don't count on what's in your career centers right now. Don't count on those classifications. The truth is, if we do what we need to do for our society today to create a sustainable future for us and our children and our grandchildren, every job will have a green tinge to it. Since energy waste, the production of toxins that we pour into the earth and the air, food chain disruption, and ecosystem destruction is costly to us in our quality of life, even if it's not factored into our economy, and it's unacceptable if we want to have a future. The thing is, are we paying attention? Because for decades, we haven't been paying attention to a lot of the actions that have caused those things there. Are we ready to pay attention? Are we ready to make the change? And you know, Professor Zients, who's a professor of psychology at Stanford, has done a whole stream of research showing that people are uncomfortable with change. So if you want to make positive change in the world, get uncomfortable. Okay, so this is a time for a lot of discomfort. It's a time for what's going to feel like a lot of risk-taking, because that's what it requires to make positive change. Now, if you want to just predict employment, a shortcut I have for you is follow the money. Okay? The money right now is not so much in the private sector, although there's a lot of investments going into renewables and energy efficiency projects, and those aren't necessarily going to be the winners. Follow the money. A lot of that money is coming down through Department of Labor, Department of Energy, government programs that are removing market barriers that are outdated and shouldn't be there anyway. And when you follow the money, you'll see where the economic activity is, and then you can predict where the jobs are. You talk to those employers. I mean, if you've been following the weatherization money, some of it's finally getting out there, and they're finally admitting they may have to hire people if they're going to ramp up by 10 times. But I think that's a very reductionistic view of how you should design your programs, and I don't think it's taking the role of what community colleges need to be right now. The other piece is helping to create the businesses so we have a strong green economy, and I'll get back to that. So here's a workforce system framework that DOL did, and it's interesting because, I know you can't read it, it's okay. It shows the drivers. Policy is a big driver. You know, when I go into, my students do commercial energy audits for their final project, and we don't do it against a key in a theoretical building because we're committed to sustainability education, are interested in real world problem solving. So they do real energy audits on real buildings out in the community. And when they come back and say, you know, they could change out this boiler or the firing system for optimization, and the return on investment is there, but because of the way that the company is structured, the tax codes or the bonus setup or the state and federal regulations, it doesn't make sense, then we know we have state and federal regulations that are out of whack. So some of those drivers need to be changed. And you'll see there's skills changers here, there's roles, and then the role of the community college is different for the green economy than it is in our traditional technology programs. And I'm going to pull it out of this chart and add some more and talk about it. Okay, have I overwhelmed you yet? Were you already overwhelmed when you walked in? So what I'd like to suggest is that we take a more conceptual and systemic approach to understanding how to educate for a sustainable and green economy, and that this will create more success for you and also for our society. First, let's look at what this means. Education for a sustainable society. This came from the World Summit. You know, we're not the only country that's working on this, right? The United Nations declared a decade of education for sustainable development, and out of the World Summit came this definition. Education for a sustainable society enables people to develop the knowledge, values, and skills to participate in decisions. Notice the emphasis on decisions that will improve quality of life now without damaging the planet for the future. It's an emphasis on quality of life for human beings on the planet. And you'll hear some of this tomorrow morning. It's worth hearing twice. The planet's going to be fine, folks. The planet's going to be fine. It's just a question of which species are going to be able to live on the planet and with what quality of life, okay? So this first piece, decisions. Well, you know, you all, most of you are involved with teaching in the technical areas, so we know how to do applied learning. We know how to do skill building. But most of higher ed, for at least the 30 years I've been in it, 43 years my husband's been in it, has been focusing on critical thinking skills. By the way, that's about as long as this critical thinking emphasis has gone on. It wasn't in higher ed 80 years ago. The gen ed, where you have to take 2 social sciences and 1 lab course and blah, 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 you know, the different silos, that didn't exist as the gen ed structure either. That's just something that we imported from Germany as discipline specific, and it may be time to change that, because it used to be an interdisciplinary core that got students to think about how to do real world problem solving using interdisciplinary thinking. Have you ever sat next to somebody at a meeting or a dinner party? They go on and on and on about what's wrong about the world and what we need to do to fix it, and you know they're not going to do anything. That person would get all A's in critical thinking. They did a good analysis. And they are what I call an armchair pontificator. We cannot afford to graduate one more armchair pontificator from higher ed. We have to teach people how to take action. And you, in some ways, are on the forefront of that. You can help all those liberal arts people to move in that direction so that we can improve quality of life now. Now, let me ask you this, improving quality of life. There is a stream of literature, lots of research that shows what the #1 indicator is of happiness in life. Here we are, higher ed, structured to create higher quality of life. Do you know what is the #1 indicator of happiness in life? If you know, raise your hand. Isn't that weird? Nobody's raising their hand. Isn't that strange? So we have to look at what the research tells us. It's the quality of your personal relationships. I live in Oakland County. It was, until a couple of years ago, the 3rd wealthiest county in the country, right next to Detroit. And a lot of my students say, oh, it's money. Once you have enough money to pay your basic bills, more money doesn't necessarily make you happier. And what has been the #1 thing that keeps showing up on our employer surveys? #1, teach our students how to work in groups, with people, with each other, okay? And we are still weak on teaching those interpersonal skills. You know what we've done? We throw them into groups. We don't teach them how to work in groups, we just throw them into groups. They hate working in groups when we do that, right? Because you have the loafers and you have those who have to cover for, I got 3 kids in college, believe me, I hear the complaints. So we have to get better at understanding those interpersonal skills. I'll tell you why else, because when you're trying to design a sustainable future, if you have people in the room whose health concepts come from a space of neediness or greediness, because they don't have a healthy self-concept, because they weren't taught the basic things that we know how to teach about building healthy relationships with self and others, they hold back the process of moving to a sustainable future. So I know you guys have been calling this soft skills for a long time, and there's been resistance to it. It's time to get over the resistance and to really integrate it in, and some of you are already experts at it, which is great. Business calls sustainability the triple bottom line. It's about simultaneously creating healthier ecosystems, healthier social systems, and healthier economies. And we used to think that if you did one, you had to give up on the other. So it was a big aha in the early 1990s when we recognized that if we make better educated decisions, we can get to all 3: healthier ecosystems, healthier social systems, and healthier economies, and recognize that every economy in the world is a modified economy. Our economy has been modified to support the burning of fossil fuels. Our economy has been modified so that when somebody gets respiratory illness and asthma or mercury poisoning from a coal-fired power plant, that doesn't show up on our energy bills. It shows up on our coverage of them when they walk into the emergency room and they're uninsured. So it's time to restructure the economy so that we tax pollution instead of income. Now, that's really simplistic, but in other words, we create disincentives to pollute, and we create incentives to build quality of life. And there's a lot of wonderful work that needs to be done, but I have spent a lot of time in the halls of Congress talking to senators about how do we get funding for community colleges so they can do green jobs training? How do we stop this? We have fossil fuel subsidies, renewable energy subsidies that barely passed at the end of last year after 6 times of voting, and energy efficiency subsidies. How do we get rid of that skewed economy? Well, part of it is recognizing that we have very strong vested interests in the political system that pay for people's reelection campaigns, and we engage in civic engagement and being a democracy. And you are the educated higher ed institutions that people look to understand that. And don't count on your political science professors to do it, because they won't. They aren't close enough to the green economy. You're the ones. We'll talk more about that. There's really only 2 things we need to do to create a sustainable future, just 2. And the inner circle and the yellow circle is what we get in higher education. And it's more than applied knowledge and technological skills, but that's education in there. The 2 things we need to do is we need to change our private behaviors. We are wasteful. We have less than 5% of the world's population. We're consuming 25 to 30% of the world's resources. It is unsustainable. So we need to change our habits. Get rid of the waste, get rid of the toxins, get rid of as much of the pollution as we can. And secondly, we need to change these laws. Not only at the national level that I was talking about and the state level in terms of how utilities are regulated, and it's happening, but it's not happening fast enough, but also in our organizations. Do you have to fight for a green building when you go to build a new building on campus? How stupid is that? Because you know during the lifetime of that building that you will pay more money out for the building if it doesn't have basic green building components to it. It should be standard in your RFPs, and it is at hundreds, if not thousands, of universities now in this country. So if we do those 2 things, change the laws and regulations and policies and change our private behaviors, we can get to a sustainable future, to more sustainable economies. Why is ecosystem on the outside? Because it is the context within which we do everything. With every breath you take, with every drink of water you take, you are receiving life-sustaining gifts from our ecosystems. And they are not costed into our economic models, our economic systems, our policies and regulations, not fully costed in. So recognize that it's all within the context of our ecosystems. And the ecosystems are a very high priority because they're all under stress. We have rivers that are polluted and going dry, nearly half. We have fish species that are in decline, that are collapsed. We thought they'd come back, they haven't. And then there's climate change. How many of you in this room think climate change is going on? Would you raise your hand? You think climate change is going on? Okay, so for those of you who don't think climate change is going on, I implore you to go read the peer-reviewed journal articles. Go read the science. Stop reading Time magazine and go read the science, because we are like the student who's left the paper till the night before it's due. We must take action. Actually, it was due about 10 years ago. But if we take action, we will mitigate, we will reduce the amount of human suffering. We are already seeing disruption of the food chain. Animal goes to get its food, it's not there anymore because it either can't survive in that climate anymore or because it was there 2 months ago, which is out of cycle. We're seeing more extreme weather events. The head of the National Academy of Sciences, by the way, issues a report saying, don't talk about needing more research to show whether climate change is occurring or not. It is occurring. And one of the things is insurance companies are paying out in 1 year for extreme weather events what they used to pay out in 10 years. Disruptions, you think energy's an issue, water's even more of an issue. And then I live in Oakland County outside of Detroit, where I have to have a screened-in porch because we have West Nile. This is a subtropical disease in a temperate climate. We are seeing the movement of these diseases because of climate change, and then there's the submersion of the land masses. The ice is melting at a rate that is shocking scientists around the world, shocking them. That is much faster than most of the models that were out there. So we are seeing and will continue to see sea level rise. I have a girlfriend, she's a lawyer for the UN. She walks around for the island countries. She walks around with a snorkel and a mask, like, hey, we are going under now. I've met universities that are going under now. 50% of the world's population lives on the coast. Do we really want to relocate them the way we did with Katrina? Is that all we can be as a species? I don't think so. You don't think so either, right? So I don't call it climate change anymore. It's civilization disruption. And the Pentagon and the National Defense University is calling it a national security threat. So we have to move on climate change. It is outside the normal variability of climate, and we are the first generation capable of determining the habitability of the planet for humans and other species. And not just climate change, but all the other things we are doing, which is stressing our ecosystems. And all our ecosystems are stressed according to the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. The decisions of this generation, the decisions of the next few years are crucial. So, our decisions will create more scarcity and suffering, or as the Pentagon's been saying, more scarcity wars and conflicts, or a future of greater abundance and higher quality of life. Although we do have to have a conversation about what quality of life is. I'll talk more about that tomorrow morning. The global perspective, if you hung up this poster, although it is true, around your campuses, you are going to depress people. You don't want to depress people. So this poster needs something on the right-hand side that says, and there's a lot we can do about it. You might want to create, like a lot of colleges have done, a logo for all of your green and sustainability efforts. Anybody here have a logo on campus for that? Got 1, 2, 3? Good. A lot of great examples out there, so that everywhere it pops up on campus, you're creating a culture on campus of shifting to more sustainable living practices and organizational practices. Because a lot of the public doesn't even know that this issue exists, that if everybody on the planet lives like we do, we'll need 4 to 6 planets of resources and we only have 1, and they don't know that solutions exist, that we can reduce human suffering and environmental degradation now while building stronger economies. So we need a rapid shift. Not just education, but education to action is the key. So here's a more comprehensive way of looking at educating for the green economy. Number 1, every human being interacts with the planet and the ecosystems we depend upon for life. Everyone has an important role to play in helping to create a sustainable future. Nobody can turn the lights off for people. Nobody can help them choose to pollute less. They have to make those behavioral choices based on technical information, and higher ed is the high credibility source to get that. Some of the most crucial jobs in green haven't been created yet, so you have to understand the green economy so you can predict it and contribute to its strength. See, our model at community colleges have been waiting until the employers show up on the advisory committee and say, we have X number of jobs, and then you create the course for it. We can't do that with this. We have to have a deeper understanding of the green economy so that we can predict what's coming and then also work with the companies to add to the strength. I'll talk more about that in a minute. It's not just green jobs we're talking about here, it's green thinking. I don't know about you, but half of my students are unemployed auto engineers, and many of my students are people who aren't necessarily looking for careers yet, but they understand this is important and they want to learn more about it. So you may want to think about your courses not just being for technicians going into the workforce, but for a larger market. And it's not just green thinking. You may want to help your continuing ed areas of the college with their offerings so that they understand this. It's not just green thinking, it's systems thinking. I can't tell you how many places I am where people are doing good things in little locales, but we need to shift the whole society. So whatever you do is a precedent for the national. Whatever you do, if you think in terms of systems change and creating effective change, is a precedent for others. So we need to be collaborating and networking like never before. This isn't just education for technicians, although it is that, it's beyond that. And community colleges have a unique and important role to play that requires new actions, implications. All of our technology programs need to incorporate green and triple bottom line principles, all of them. So I put up a few, right? Construction, HVAC, automotive, manufacturing, electrical, plumbing, health. Sure, you know, those nurses get out there, there is so much waste in the health industry. And the energy manager in that building can only do so much, but if the nurses are on board, you watch out. And they know where to reduce the waste if they've got green thinking. Secondly, all students in all degrees need to be literate about our sustainability and greening challenges and be able to engage in solutions as consumers. Technicians won't have jobs if people aren't making these choices as consumers, as employees and employers, as community members, and as investors. So if you have the big developers who show up at your local community planning commission and say, we want to get rid of all of the wetlands and we don't care about this part of the environment and we don't care about green building and we need this for jobs, and nobody's there to say, that's a bunch of myths. You can do all of this and create jobs, even more jobs, in a green and sustainable way. If there isn't that community engagement, then you're going to get what the vested interest wants. And the developers, once they get educated about this, will come on board. People are used to doing what they know, and they're uncomfortable with making change. So, not only does it need to be in all degrees, which means you have to reach out to those liberal arts people. You actually have to pay attention to the Gen Ed core curriculum. You actually have to think about a college-wide initiative. Remember, writing across the curriculum? Well, it was somewhat successful, but now we really got to do this greening and sustainable across the curriculum, and there are lots of really exciting, successful models. And in some ways, the Community College Network has been real leaders in this. But we also have to look at learning for the public and use the media. Let me just tell you a story. So when I started teaching this stuff, and I was, 23 or 24, and my dean said, I don't think you can do this because you're a girl, but I'll let you try. True story. He said, if you fill your classes, I'll give you tenure. So I would have students build solar collectors out of low-cost recycled materials and bring them in and line them up on the hill, and they'd be putting out, 100 degrees, 200 degrees more. What did I do? Not just grade them and hand them back. I called the TV stations. I've got a great visual for you. That's the line to get TV stations out. And all of a sudden it was on the 6 o'clock news. Not only did I get more students, but I also got education of the public. Now, we don't tend to think about that as teachers or as deans, but we have a very important role to play in educating the public. And also, people at all different levels. These four-year institutions that I spend a lot of time with in one of my roles, they don't get it about reaching out to the professionals in the industry and retraining them the way that we do. So I don't think I've got a kid without a bachelor's degree. Maybe, out of 40 in my Intro to Renewables sections, I've got maybe 8. The rest are all bachelor's, master's degree people coming back. Now, it's not always like that, but it's a recognition that we have all these different levels that we need to teach, tradespeople. So here's what is the core knowledge and skills that all students need, all students. First, they have to be literate about our sustainability challenges. And that myfootprint.org shows them how if everybody lives like you do, we need 4 to 6 planets worth of resources. Earth-policy.org is a wonderful site for a book that talks about the solutions, how we can meet our energy needs with renewable energies and energy conservation, how we can reduce poverty at the same time. It really helps if you're feeling depressed about the situation to get you moving and engaged in solutions. And also this triple bottom line conceptual frame is a very important frame, so people don't come from fear and scarcity to try and create sustainability solutions. Engagement in real world problem solving is a core pedagogy of green and sustainable education, and skills and attitudes to be systemic thinkers and effective change agents. And that's a link, by the way. I assume this is going to be posted somewhere. Good. And when it's posted, a lot of these things are links. That links you to learning outcomes for sustainability, where it says effective change agents, and a list of change agent skills. I include that optimism and interpersonal skills because it is so important for personal effectiveness and also for shifting the system of our society. Civic engagement in policies for a green and sustainable future. There's national initiatives you can hook into, the National Teach-In, Power Shift. We have students who will do analyses of how to make a community greener. Their final project is to present it to the city council. They are changed as people by doing that project. And if you can't get that done within a semester, create what I call legacy projects. They start it, the next semester continues it, and they feel a part of something bigger that's making a positive difference. Now, what about technical students? Besides the last slide, what's the additional core knowledge and skills for all technical students? Well, the market's messy right now, so I think this is an ongoing conversation. I'm not going to tell you I have all the answers, but of course you need the basics. For goodness sakes, don't make them take such a high-level math that's taught in the abstract that you knock them out of the system. That's ridiculous. Math should be applied math, and you can be teaching all sorts of wonderful technical skills plus personal finance and organizational and budgets and sustainability facts through math classes. Anybody wants to work on those textbooks with us, let us know. And the math associations get it, but we need to get those texts. There's a few out, but we need more. We need to add to the basic information that we already teach that the impacts of our actions, although they seem invisible to us, are not invisible. It affects the quality of life of our lives and people around the globe. So make the invisible visible. With energy analyses, our technical students need to know how to do energy analyses. If the HVAC guys get out and they don't know how to do that, their owner will say to them, go sell this furnace, it'll pay for itself in 1 year, and they don't know that that's not true. Energy analyses, greenhouse gas, and other pollution analyses, life cycle analyses are crucial. EPA's got a really nice site. I'll turn that into a live link before I turn this over. And cradle-to-cradle analyses, which is you don't produce toxins at the end of the product life cycle. We're the only species that does, but you use it as inputs to the next product life cycle. That's Bill McDonough, who's doing green communities in China. He's greening Chicago. He did the Ford plant where the stuff is cleaner going out than coming in. That's manufacturing for the future. All of these types of analyses should be included in the daily creation of products by companies, in the selection of products by companies, and in the installation and servicing decision processes. If we don't graduate people who can do that, what you'll have is a bunch of greenwashing in the marketplace. And we can't afford to have greenwashing. So it takes not only the skills, it takes that they also have the assertiveness and the entrepreneurial skills to integrate green and sustainability into the workplace. That they don't just learn it in school, but they can go out and talk to their employers about it. So that when they go out to do the work, they naturally say, hey, we could be doing this too. We can make more money by doing it. Those are the kinds of things you need to teach. Okay, so in closing, a few things. Where are the green jobs? Oh, I know you want these slides, don't you? Look at all these sites, eh? Isn't that just delicious? You'll look at them all, you'll get overwhelmed. Some of them are highly populated, some of them are barely populated, and then you get some announcement by the vice president that all of a sudden we're going to weatherize over 120 million homes. That throws a loop into your curricular planning. The key is, with all those links I just showed, put them in your career centers, because your career centers don't have them. Educate your counselors about this, and don't let them promise jobs when the jobs aren't there. That's not fair. I tell all my students I've got no guarantees of jobs, but I'll give you the skill sets so that you can understand what's going on out there and you can be more prepared for a job. But don't guarantee jobs when they aren't there. 3 more crucial key actions. Educate the public. Work with your state energy office who's trying to educate the public, your utility companies. They don't know whether to trust the utility companies, and sometimes they shouldn't, but sometimes they should. Your utilities, your public service commissions, your Energy Star, your Federal Department of Energy. Get that information out from you as a highly credible resource so that they will say, okay, I will weatherize my home. This program of recovery through retrofits does make sense. And not just through the news outlets, but also through the cultural outlets. I used to call the radio station every month and say, I have a news story for you. They'd put me on the radio. I was Debbie Rowe, the energy doctor. Boy, did I get students. But I also educated the public. Convene partnerships, community forums to catalyze the entrepreneurship and organizational and governmental policies that will build a healthy green economy. Do community futuring around sustainability. Let me give you one example of a partnership. And there's lots of examples. Green for All has lots of great examples about pathways out of poverty. Richmond Solar, actually a nonprofit, could have been a community college, that said, we will train people to do solar. They did. They then got people to install solar, but they brought in their own crews from outside of the state. Very disappointing to the people who had just graduated. So they created a new partnership. Hey, city, we got third-party investors. We'll put solar on all of your buildings, but you have to use our graduates to install it. That's a partnership that made sense. We don't normally think that way as community colleges, but these are partnerships that make a difference. And then reach out to the associations. Don't let the existing builders, plumbers, mechanical contractors, engineers, manufacturers, chambers of commerce that have all sorts of businesses, don't let their members be lazy and greenwash. And the way to do that is you reach out to them. We just had over 100 people at OCC a couple of weeks ago. We showed them how to make more money and to make more profits and expand their businesses by really, truly going green and sustainable. So reach out. We had co-sponsors of all of those associations. They end up being your advisory committee members. They end up training their own employees and hiring the new ones. So the lab can be a community demonstration center. It can be mobile. We've got a trailer that we're going to pull with French fry grease, powered van, but it can be a model for the community. It's a lab during the week. It's a community demonstration center on weekends or on evenings when you don't have classes. You are modeling, not just your lab, but the whole campus, every building, every process. Our purchasing policies at our college is a model for our community and socially and environmentally responsible purchasing. You can also take it on the road, the Sustainable Living Roadshow. Make it part of your student activities. Look, we can choose a sustainable future. We can do this. But it means stepping outside of our normal job descriptions, getting creative with it, having fun with it. I want to congratulate you for everything you've already done, and I'm interested to hear about it as we go along in the next few days. Even more so, though, congratulations for everything you'll do in the future. Let your enthusiasm show. It's contagious. Thank you.